It's time to shop, shop, shop. Or at least do some browsing as you check out our Kickstarter Pickstarters for the week of July 15th, 2019. We're starting off by entering the world of Etherfields from Awakened Realms. You have lost all your memories. All you know is that your body has been taken. You are an empty vessel and you are out to try to find out what in the world is going on. In this game, you'll try to be exploring the Etherfields, this dreamlike world where not only will you be crossing through this much bigger map, but also going to certain locations and zooming in on tile placement similar to Seventh Continent or Escape Tales The Awakening. And like those games, depending on your actions, you may actually have to change the map, which will affect how you proceed forward. You may come across creatures, but combat isn't your only strategy. In fact, it may be your worst option. There are plenty of puzzles and riddles that you may have to discover to solve in order to find out what truly happened to you. And this, because this is a Kickstarter, there are a lot of beautiful miniatures, as well as plenty of expansions for you to throw on, in addition to the core set by itself. The game itself looks, I think, is the kind of stuff I'm really interested in. Usually anytime where the board changes because of your choices means I think there's always that extra bit of story flavor that, you and I always seem to be attracted to.
It feels like you're actually exploring a place instead of just going on a path they set out for you.
Yes, exactly. And because they took the idea of like more of a dreamland path, maybe it is actually connected to the dream worlds in Lovecraft lore, who knows. And what's fun is you can have a lot more different environments without being like, okay, this is really need to be here. You're like, oh, I'm in a weird dream place. Like one of the examples of the video was actually like a car. You're driving a car all of a sudden and you see like a girl on the side of the road and you're like, when you go to see what's over there, then you see like it's not a girl. Spoilers. And then the tile changed and stuff. And then like a monster appeared on the board. So like I can imagine there's all this fun that they can have with this, and I'm really curious to see where this ends up, as stretch goals unlocked and stuff.
Yeah, this probably would have been one of my picks if you didn't have it already, but it's Awakened Realms has definitely impressed me with all of their games so far. Having played this War of Mine and everything else, just it seems like the production value and the level of depth is really great. The only thing that's holding me back, unfortunately, is all of their games are also really expensive.
Yes, this one is $94 because they have a lot in there. And I mean, those minis, those aren't just like, these are some, at least they look like some of the most detailed minis. They're at least up there.
And there's a campaign they said in it. They said like 50 hours of campaign.
In the core alone, I believe,
Yeah, so it's, you're getting your content value at least.
But yeah, either way, even though it's pricey, I definitely think this is one you should keep an eye out for. Unfortunately, I think by the time you're watching this, they had a 24-hour special to get a free character. Probably is out by now. Maybe you're in the last few minutes or hours, depending on when this is uploaded. But definitely take a look at the Etherfields.
Our next game is Chasm. That's S-H-A-S-N. It is a political-themed game. Players in this game are playing as politicians, trying to get the most votes, getting majority control of different areas, depending on what type of region that you're playing in. The base set lets you play either in the US or in India, but they also have a higher tier that you can play in USA in the future in 2040, so it's got a little bit of a futuristic vibe, or in ancient Rome, so there's some different flavors for you. On your turn, you are going to be making a decision, a policy decision, and based on what your decision is, you'll get different types of resource tokens. You can then use those resources to try to sway certain voters, and ultimately you're trying to place voters in different regions to gain majority in those regions. It's an area control at its core, but it has to have some interesting political twists. You can form coalitions with other players, where if you have enough pieces to have a combined majority, you can kind of form an alliance that may be temporary in that way. Like I said, there's going to be choices that you're making, but you don't know what your choice will give you. So it's up to you to decide if you want to really go for your character's ideology and stick to your tenets, your beliefs, or if you think there's a different one that might get you something better that you want. You have to kind of take that leap of faith. Depending on how you play, there are also ideology cards. So you might end up being like, you might get the capitalist benefit, and they have different powers you can use if you go in that direction. Some interesting weird stuff going on, and also kind of a cool, classical looking kind of art style, I would say. Definitely looks like a sort of Twilight Struggle-esque kind of game, but it is for more than just 2 players. So, maybe if you're into these kind of political games, this one, we've seen a bunch of them, but this one seemed to do things a little bit more interestingly, I thought.
Well, it seems that it isn't just, let's just write on whoever are the 2 politicians. And it's nice that it's not just 2-player, because if you looked at a lot of the recent political races, there seem to be quite a lot of candidates on each side.
Yeah, it only makes sense that you would have that option. I'm not sure exactly what how much is different about the other versions of it. That's something maybe if you'll explore deeper than I did, maybe you'll find that out. But the base set goes for $59. That includes the USA and India versions of the game. Go check it out. It's Chasm.
Next, we have Out of the Box from Nerdarchy. You might actually recognize this name if you're more into the role-playing scene on YouTube and forums, because this is actually a sort of collection from Nerdarchy, who do a lot of content about some of the role-playing ideas they've come up with and stories, and try to make a whole book in which it's different scenarios for you to play out as a DM, and how to add some more interesting ones and deal with maybe some of those weirder but yet common reactions players would go with, instead of, following your storyline that you've worked so hard to make. It not only adds a lot of different interesting scenarios, like one they show like a boat, scarecrows, but maybe how to make them even longer, or even turn them into their own campaign if you really like that kind of those story hooks or beats. It's a great idea. I mean, it's the kind of thing, especially if you're an early GM, I think is just going to be very helpful. I know I had hard times trying to come up with interesting stuff, and they sort of some of them fell flat on their face. And something like this could help you, even if you don't use it exactly. Just knowing like, okay, this is how I would do something if I wanted them to be in a jail, I think was another example they showed too. And I mean, you're more experienced than I am, at least writing, and I think it'd still be useful for you, because just giving a couple ideas, maybe even a room in a dungeon, it's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I'm more experienced by like 20% more.
That's still more experienced.
But is this work for any kind of role-playing system
specifically? They said 5e in it,
okay.
But I'm sure... I mean, if you're new, probably it's a little bit harder, but you're probably in the D&D area anyways. But if you're, because I think they're all fantasy related, probably a little bit harder. But if you're a bit more seasoned, I bet you could take this and be like, if you were looking at Pathfinder, I'll just change this to this monster or something,
Sure.
You probably, I think, could craft it. Even if you were like experienced maybe Shadowrun, you could be like, okay, I'm going to just change these to hackers or something,
Yeah, hey, there's fantasy stuff there too.
I think it's probably a good addition for the entire experienced DM spectrum.
Got it.
And of course, this has many different levels depending if you just want digital or physical. I believe it's 20 for the digital with 40 on the physical. So if you want to give DM a try, this may be one you want to look out for, so you can make sure your experience has memorable and fun events.
Magical Kitties Save the Day is the name of this next role-playing game. This is being published by Atlas Games, and players in this game are magical kitties, and each cat in this world, this universe, is assigned to a human. And it is your job to protect that human, get them through their daily lives, whatever the case may be. This is an RPG that is definitely geared towards all ages. It could hopefully be played by kids even as young as maybe 3 or 4. It uses simple, streamlined rules using a system of D6s. You roll a bunch of them, and you need to get enough results of a certain number, depending on the difficulty level, in order to pass. But what's also cool about this, I mean, it's very anime inspired, so at least I think so in terms of that, just that premise sounds really anime. But it's not just cats that are magic helping humans. There's also all kinds of weird stuff. There's aliens, there's robots, there's monsters, and other fantasy tropes that you might encounter. So there's even more weird stuff beyond that. You only have 3 traits in this game that are cunning, cute, I forget what the third one is. Fierce, I want to say. Cunning, cute, and fierce. So, it's very basic. You get an extra die if you're using, or more dice depending on your level in those. You might have some special traits on cards that give you other bonuses. But in general, it's a simple game, good for kids, good for maybe cat lovers of all ages. It even comes with a comic book that acts as a mini adventure. So you can read it and it's solo play, learn how to play, or actually just start playing a little fun adventure all on your own once you open the box.
And this is sort of jokey, but I actually think this could be sort of a sub-rule they have in there, and you can tell me if they actually do mention it to help for younger audiences. You could actually have 9 lives. So if you die, you don't have to lose your character.
Yeah, I actually don't know how. I don't think the combat rules are that in depth, but yeah, maybe that's a thing. I don't know. I guess eventually, yeah, you might get hurt. Anyway, you can check it out. It goes for $15 for the digital version, or you can get $25 for a physical copy of Magical Kitties Saving the Day.
Inexorable Media brings us Magi, Mundi, Bestiary. This is actually their first book. Apparently they're working on a world of Magi Mundi, but they decided to release the Bestiary first. This is actually designed to work with both 5e and Pathfinder, which is very nice. It's if you don't know what Bestiary is, it's a book of monsters. A whole lot of creatures and critters for you to throw into your campaign. It's one of those things I think, in particular Bestiaries, I think it's something to keep an eye out for in role-playing games, because there comes a time when if you're trying to play with characters and let's say they've come across, I think the one that a lot of people like to use is trolls before, and they're supposed to be very weak to fire is how you hurt them. And, if you've played D&D enough, you're like, okay, I just know I gotta go to fire. But your character might not supposed to, and it's sort of hard to sometimes separate that.
Yeah.
So having a bigger list of creatures to sort of throw a surprise maybe someone's way so that they can, without trying too hard, act as they're surprised and not sure how to deal with the creature. And also maybe dealing with creatures like, I think the one I love was like a bison tea. It's like a manatee bison.
That sounds good to me.
Creatures that maybe aren't threatening, you can maybe do something a bit more interesting with too. I think just having more options for creatures just helps make the world a bit more interesting. And also, as I said, if you're as a player role-playing, you don't have to try hard to not know how to kill something.
Yeah, you get to be surprised a little bit. It sounds fun. I'm all for that bison tea. All for it.
I'm curious to see how this comes forward. Like I said, this is the Bestiary, but they're apparently working on the whole world. So we'll see what they do, whether they have a separate player's guide and Dungeon Master guide or just one whole book. I'm curious to see how far this goes. Like all our previous RPGs, there's a digital and physical. This one is $15 for the digital and $25 for the physical.
Copenhagen from Queen Games is getting its own roll and write. Like pretty much every other game it seems these days, it's the Copenhagen roll and write. This game involves you building up different buildings with special windows and other materials and tools in the city of Copenhagen, but now it's all roll and write. So it's on a little sheet of paper. On a player's turn, they're going to roll some dice, and they're going to have different colors of different sides in those dice. And you can take the colors that you want, put them together, and choose a shape from an available pool of shapes. Then you would take that shape and draw it into somewhere on your personal player sheet. And you have to fill in those shapes. They could be between 2 and 5 blocks, I believe, with either circles, which represent windows, or X's, which represent not a window, just part of the building. You're gonna get points if you manage to have an entire row or column of just windows. There's also a limited amount of some shapes. The ones that have 4 sides or more are first come, first serve. And what's also interesting is whatever colors you don't choose on your turn, the other players are going to be able to choose the colors that are left on the dice to use them for different player powers. So you may have to consider which powers you don't want to give your opponents. Pretty much seems like the same thing as Copenhagen, more or less, at least in concept, but of course you're doing it on a sheet instead of using actual physical pieces. So I don't know, maybe are we tired of roll and writes? I just thought this was kind of...
I was going to say, I'm surprised we don't say them more often in our Kickstarter, Pickstarter. Maybe they're all being developed and next year we're going to see all the Kickstarters for them.
I don't know. It seems like, sometimes they just go straight to retail too, but...
No, the retail, we hear them all the time, but I feel like on Kickstarter, at least, we've gotten a couple, but I think for all the times we've seen them come out, I don't think we've seen the rush to Kickstarter with them yet.
Mm-hmm. I thought this one was funny because Copenhagen was one of my Kickstarter picks like 2 months ago or something, if it was even that long ago, so they're just like, get out that roll and write. We're ready for it. So you can check this one out. It's only $20 if it sounds like fun to you.
those are our picks for this week. If you're hungry for more, we've got some videos for you. We actually did a separate video for Margraves of Valeria, continuing the Valeria line from Daily Magic Games, and another game called Robinson Crusoe Escape from Despair Island. This is not the Portal game.
No, it's different. Yeah, so you go check those out if you want to. Some fun stuff on Kickstarter lately. So check it all out. We got links in that description down below, and definitely comment as well and let us know what you are backing this week, or are you saving all your money up possibly because Gen Con is only a couple weeks away, if you're one of the lucky people who will be attending.
Yes, let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to say hi to us if you see us at Gen Con. But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit Kickstarter Pickstarter.
Never miss out by liking and subscribing, and you can also check out more on our Patreon.
We do weekly podcasts on Patreon. Don't you want to sign up and hear more of our voices?